When we talk about the issue of education from a biblical worldview, it's so hard to compress that into a soundbite. Like if someone says,
Yes,
"What is
it is.
education from a biblical worldview?" It's so hard to answer.
That's why the book is well worth your time.
And so, I'm grateful that we have 250 pages in the book that I can talk to, really extrapolate it and explain what it is. But I explained it yesterday to my children in our family Bible time. And I do this a lot because I think we have to be repetitious with
Yeah.
our own families, with our own children. But I find that if I don't back out and give our family the 30,000-foot view of why we're doing what we're doing, then we can just lose sight of the whole thing because we're so focused on the nuts and bolts and the micro details and just
Yeah.
making it through the day and checking off lists and all of that we forget why we're doing what we're doing. And so I'll just try to explain real quickly what I said to my own children in my living room
Okay.
yesterday. Um, I said the thing is most people have who call themselves Christians live with a framework or a viewpoint of what I call compartmentalized Christianity.
Mm.
And it's theologians call it the sacred secular dichotomy. And what that means is that our life is split into two basic realms. We have a sacred realm of our life, and then we have a secular realm of our life. And the sacred realm of our life is usually quite small, and it contains going to church, reading the Bible,
Mhm.
saying the sinner's prayer, giving some money to the church, maybe volunteering at the church. If we're
Mhm.
super spiritual, like small group, like listening to K-Love in the radio as we drive around. Like we have a little
Yeah.
slice, an Our Daily Bread devotional. Something that we have a spiritual slice. I often refer to it as the spiritual box. And we put all our
Mm.
spiritual things in our spiritual box. But then we have all of the rest of our life that basically is secular. Our job, our friendships, our entertainment choices, our hobbies, where we vacation, the books we read, just what influences us, what shapes our thinking, whether it's video games or whether it's hiking or just, whatever our vocation or avocation is, we're a mechanic or we run a restaurant or whatever. But our
Yeah.
faith doesn't find a way to integrate that very well for the most part. And so the way that most people develop their worldview, I think, is largely formed and created because of the schooling that they experience. And they
Mhm.
experience this split, this sacred secular split, if you will, in the schools because when they go to school, you shut off the Jesus stuff. We
Mhm.
don't do that here. We don't need Jesus in the math classroom. We don't need Jesus in the
Mhm.
science classroom. We're fine without Jesus here. So Jesus has a place. Like if you want to do Jesus, that's fine. That's cool. That's up to you. Okay. But you do that at home privately on your own time and
Mhm.
and you do that at church or wherever you do your whatever religion you want to do. You do that off campus. You don't do that here. This is not a space for that. And so basically what they learn is that there's spaces for these religious activities, and then there's spaces where we just don't do the religious activities don't even fit. Like they're not even a
Right.
part. They don't play into it in any way, shape, or form. And so if you go to public school, that's your experience. Now, if you go to Christian school, this is when I'm gonna get myself in trouble. Not with you, but I'm gonna get you in trouble with your
Go for
listeners right about
it.
now. If you go to Christian school, you get a slightly modified version of that,
Mhm.
where you basically get that, except for you get a Bible class
Mhm.
and then you get chapel,
Chapel.
right? And
Yep.
so your religious or sacred sphere there is like chapel and Bible class.
Mhm.
And then the rest of the time is pretty close to what you get at public school. Now, I will say, I think in some places that's changing and improving. I'm grateful for that. I think there are some
Yes. Mhm.
even Christian school publishers that are becoming much more intentional. And I'll just throw out a name for fun. Bob Jones Press is one that has
Mhm.
become much more intentional about
Hmm.
integrating biblical worldview into all of their subjects at all of their grade levels than they were 20 years ago.
Hmm.
So I think there are pockets where that is improving in the Christian world space, but Christian school space. But traditionally, that's maybe I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. We'll get some pushback on that, but I think for the most part it's
I
true.
don't think.
Yeah, so there still is that sort of sacred secular dichotomy that happens even within the Christian school. And so people who are raised in those two environments, even if they start homeschooling, that's still their template. And
Yep.
so, like their academics, I know a lot of people say, I'm a Christian, but I don't bring Christianity into like our academics.
Right.
And that's that sacred secular
They're
dichotomy.
trying to be
That's the
neutral.
Yeah, exactly. Like we have this religiously neutral space over here, and we'll do Bible time, okay? And that's where we're going to talk about Jesus. That's where we're going to do
Yeah.
religion. But then we have this secular education that we're giving our children. So what I told my children is I said there's really only two worldviews. Like there's thousands, right? We could talk about Marxism and environmentalism and feminism, and we could talk about all kinds of different critical race theory, and we could talk about all kinds of different isms and ideologies and belief systems, right? But ultimately, there's only two. Everything boils down to two. One is humanism, and that is that
Hmm.
man is the center of all things, and the other is biblical Christianity.
Hmm.
Those are the only two worldviews that actually exist. Everything that's not biblical Christianity is ultimately humanism. It's man knowing there's a problem, but thinking that he can solve his own problems by his own strength, his own effort, his own merit. And
Hmm.
it's putting himself as the final arbiter of truth, the final solution to the problems. And so, regardless of what you think the problem in the world is, every effort that you bring to it is just you trying to solve the problems in your own strength, or humanity trying to do so in their collective strength. And
Hmm.
so it's very easy for us to be humanists functionally, even though we're confessional Christians.
Yeah.
So we make a profession of faith and we say we believe in Jesus. We think he died on the cross to save us from our sins so we can go to heaven when we die. And that's our little sacred sphere, right? But then the
Hmm.
whole rest of our life is very much about us being king of our life and doing whatever we want to do to please ourselves. And we tend to look at almost everything in life as being um, a means or an end to us ex avoid well, I would say it comes down for most people to avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure. Now, that is a primary motivator for most people. They want to be comfortable, they want to be affluent, they want to be recognized, they want to be respected, they want to have fun, they want to have things that they own that bring them some self-worth or
Hmm.
satisfaction. But all what is all of that? It's all of that is humanism, right? And so it's very easy to look at the things that we do and that we study, like let's say in homeschooling, from a humanistic framework. And I often ask parents, like, why do you teach your children math? And they'll say, well, I teach my children math because they need it for the real world. Okay, so why do they need it for the real world? Well, you need math if you're going to be able to have a job and make money and support a family. And I go, okay, so why is it important to have a job and make money? Well, because you have to pay your bills and you have to survive and buy groceries and keep your electric on and okay, right,
Hmm.
but like for what purpose? Well, for what purpose do you have to do all of that? And it's amazing how people just will shut down in the conversation, not even get where I'm going with it. Like they're just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know where you're going with it. And so, what I try to communicate to people is like life has ends and means. And
Hmm.
there's very few actual ends in life. Almost everything in life is a means to an end.
Yeah.
And people pursue some things as an end, like money or a house or a car or a boat or whatever, like that's an end, or a retirement account or whatever. Like I worked my whole life for this, right? But in reality, almost everything we have is a means. Like an education is a means, a high school diploma is a means, a college degree is a means, a job is a means to what? Like to a paycheck. Money is a means to something, to buying something. But then all the things that you buy are a means to something else. A
Hmm.
phone, a laptop, a car. They're all means to something, right? And what is that too? Well, they're means that help you do what you're supposed to do with your life.
Hmm.
And what are you supposed to do with your life? Well, you either live to, know, love, and serve yourself, or you live to know, love, and serve God and love and serve others. And so, I asked my children as we were doing Bible time yesterday, I said, why do you think we're studying all this Bible stuff? What's the point of all of this? Why do we study the Bible? Of course, I got some blank looks, and I realized like I have younger children, and I haven't had this chat with my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old, and my 8-year-old probably doesn't remember it as well as she should. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
repeat, put these things on repeat
You do.
when you have large
Yeah.
families, and you can't assume like, oh, I've taught the younger ones this because sometimes you forget you
They
haven't
were
done it.
they were babies.
Yeah, for sure. And so anyway, I said, we have to think about why we study even the Bible. And so finally I got one of my older ones to say, well, we study the Bible to know God, right? And why do we need to know God? Well, we need to know God because, obviously we want to worship him and we want to love him and serve him and be in relationship with him. And right. And then what's the outworking of that? Once we come to know God and who he is and what he's done for us and all that, then what is our response to that? Well, then we want to love and serve him by loving and serving other people. And so, and then so I flipped it and I said, so then why do we study math? And the reason we study math and science and history and language arts and all those other subjects is exactly the same reason we study the Bible. And it's the same
Mhm.
reason we study church history. And it's the same reason that we study theological topics like
Mhm.
or like right now we're doing a whole series on the Puritans, just kind of a church history thing. And I
Mhm.
asked him, I said, why are we studying the Puritans? What do you think is the goal for us in trying to learn about the Anabaptists or the Puritans or whoever it is that we're studying? What's the goal of this? Of course, again, sometimes you get blank looks. And I said, the goal of it is hopefully for us to know God better
Mhm.
and to love God more and be better equipped to love and serve him and be better prepared for what God wants us to do in our life. And so everything that we study is ultimately helping to equip us and prepare us for a life that glorifies God
Mhm.
and that is given to the love and service of other people. I think most Christian homeschoolers don't keep that in front of their eyes and they don't keep it in front of their children's eyes. They're very much like you have to learn these subjects so that
Mhm.
you can finish high school, so that you can go to college, so you can get a college degree, so that you can have a career. So what is that? You're pointing them towards. There's a secular author named Neil Postman years ago who called that worldview the God of economic utility.
Wow.
This like you get an education. He wrote a book on education, and he wasn't even a believer, but he said that it's like your whole emphasis on education is to teach someone that they need all these 13 years of K-12 and then higher education all that so they can work a job and make money. And he even saw the
Yeah.
futility of it, not even being a
Yeah.
Christian. He's like, there has to be something more than that. And so there's a lot more that I do say, a lot more that can be said about a worldview. In fact, in one sense, the way I answered that is not a typical standard what is a worldview answer even. But I think that for me, I want to constantly bring back to my children, are we functional humanists or are we
Mhm.
actually functional Christians? Because I don't
That's
want to
really
just be
good.
confessing Christians and functional humanists. I don't want
Mhm.
to just say, well, we love Jesus, but then every day of our life is about us and it's about how we can make our lives happier and more successful by our definition of happy and successful. And so I think for parents, the goal for them is to constantly remind their kids that when we're studying poetry, we're studying literature, and we're studying European history, and we're studying the War of 1812, whatever it is that we're studying, the end goal of all of that is ultimately that we want to know God, we want to understand his ways, and we want to be prepared for life and understand life so that we can live truthfully, so that we can serve other people ethically, and so that we can really do everything that we do to the glory of God. That's really, I think, the essence of a biblical worldview when it comes to education.